Hey, welcome to the Mindset. I'm Christopher Feltner, training architect with Ukeru Systems, and with me.
Hi, I'm Kim Sanders. I'm the president of Ukeru.
So it's a rare moment these days when we both get to sit here and do this together. So we're going to riff on a few things, but to start, what'd you do over the holiday legally?
Um, I ate a lot.
Ate a lot.
It's way too much. Yeah,
Yeah.
cooking and eating. Yeah.
What was the best thing you ate over the holiday?
Oh, turkey and stuffing by far.
Interestingly enough, I don't know if I had any turkey.
Right, because you were in.
I was in Key Largo, Florida.
That's the best. So you probably had like margaritas and stuff like that.
There was a margarita or
Nice.
two. Let's see. Probably my favorite thing. There's this place called Porky's Barbecue.
Hmm.
It's in Marathon, and they have like this crazy menu, like all kinds of burgers, all kinds of barbecue. They had sushi, which was a strange choice. The best thing is I could bring my dog because I brought my dog Bear with me where we went, so that was nice. But I had this burger that was a grass-fed burger, had all kinds of toppings, barbecue, and I forget what else, like bacon on top of it. Monstrous burger, but really
Sounds
good.
amazing.
So shout out to the Porkies. So we got several things we need to talk about.
There's always so much to talk.
Right, right. I feel like we talk about things we need to talk about and then have to schedule time to talk about it.
Right, and a lot of this starts in a car
Yep, it does start in a car.
on the way to the airport or somewhere. We start talking.
I feel like a lot of the things we're going to talk about today, some of them we talked about on the way to Maryland for a trip, and recently in our travels to Regina, Canada.
Yeah.
So
In Saskatchewan.
Saskatchewan.
Yeah.
Right. So first thing we've been talking about for a while is blind loyalty. And what we mean by blind loyalty is, a common thing that we encounter on the road is, we might have some people that are really resistant to the idea of using anything else than what they're comfortable with. Whatever approach, whatever crisis intervention system, no matter what we offer and the why behind why to do something different, some people just really, really are,
Hmm.
I don't know, it's equally impressive and strange how loyal some folks can be to what they do.
We see it all the time.
Yeah.
Right? We see it all the time. I mean, I don't think it's much different than even in our training, how we talk about pathways that get built.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's the exact same thing, right? Pathways get built into what you know and what you're used to doing, and change is hard.
Yeah, I think that. I think a lot of people just get used to seeing the same trainers a lot of times. So
True.
you get that rapport. If I've been working with this trainer from this program for this amount of years, and now where I'm working is saying, hey, guess what? You got to build a new relationship.
Right.
It's almost like you just got out of a long-term relationship too soon, and and now you've got to start all over again. So I get that with it. What are the dangers in your mind, though, of blind loyalty like that?
Well, again, I think, like you're saying, there's some of it that we can rationalize and we
Mhm.
can understand, sort of wrap our heads around.
Yeah.
But I think the problem becomes when people actually realize
Mhm.
that there's something else that might be better techniques, a better value,
Mhm.
better for safe. Just in general, it might be better, but then they're still refusing to do it. To me,
Yeah.
that switches into just a pathway into resistance.
So where do you think that comes from? Do you think it's more of a mindset type of thing that leads to that? Like, I believe that the folks we serve are this type of person and need this type of approach. Like, what do you think is the why of that?
Well, for me, when I think about it, some of it's on like a very simple
Mm-hmm.
level that you just think. I mean, don't we all? I mean, even at Grafton,
Mm-hmm.
our parent company that still does behavioral health and a bunch of different things. We all want to think that our clients are the toughest.
Mm-hmm.
Everywhere we go,
Yep.
people think their clients are the toughest.
Yep.
And so some of it on a very, again, simple level, I think, is people are just afraid to do something different. They have a ton of assumptions in their head, and they sort of start to project and imagine how things are going to go bad
Hmm.
if it doesn't work.
Yeah.
And so I think that
Something, think about the history of a lot of the approaches used in our in our field. When I try to trace back the origin of physical restraint, the earliest documentation I found was 1300s in Greece.
hmm
And I think the specific journal article, it was quoted in a script that they found of physical restraint. I don't think they said mechanical. I think it was just physical restraint is how to properly treat the mentally insane. Like that was the quote. And I was thinking about that, as much as our mission has been to lessen restrictive practices, to be more trauma informed in our settings. Even before Ukeru, when restraint was all
hmm
there was out there, like it makes me wonder how bad was it even before that? Like before the first formal crisis intervention system came out, like
hmm
how wild were things then? I wonder.
Oh, I think very wild. I mean, again,
Yeah,
I think there's written
yeah,
information out there. Lord, I mean, even if you go to YouTube, you're going to find some videos that are
yeah.
just going to blow your mind.
It makes me think. We've trained several years in St. Augustine in Florida,
hmm
and actually, I just drove through there, looked at one of the dealerships there the past week, and I was thinking about the medieval torture museum where me and one of the learning engineers, Lana, went through, and just seeing stuff that it's like horrific. The things, as bad
hmm
as people treat each other now, I feel like it was so much worse over the ages. And just looking at the methods, I'm like, all of that creativity went into how to hurt people. Where's all the creativity now in doing the opposite?
Right.
Just in our field alone. Um, like, why isn't there more creative? Maybe that's a question I'd like you to think about on is where is the creativity in helping people as much as it is in how to control and subvert,
Mhm. I think creativity scares people.
there
I
is
think
that.
on the surface, when you talk to people about people want to be creative,
Hmm.
but I think when rubber hits the road, kind of, and it's time to do
Yeah.
it, I think it scares people. The thought of being creative.
You think it's a matter of just being something foreign?
No, I personally think it's the times that we live in.
Hmm.
That again, everything you're talking about, we're living in times that are so much better in some regards,
Right.
but in other regards, it's not necessarily better,
Hmm.
right? I think that people feel under a lot of scrutiny.
Yeah,
I
it's true.
feel people that feel a bit micromanaged and um again scrutinized for every little thing they do. And so I think over time what that creates, people are afraid to step out and maybe do something in their mind. They're thinking this could work, but I'm afraid to do it because if it doesn't, I'm going to be in trouble. Heck,
Yeah.
I might even lose my job.
Yeah. I feel like the probably one of the biggest things, well, you've heard the same thing over the years is, well, I don't see how this would work for this type of person. You know, it's either, I mean, I feel like it's always interesting when we work with folks who serve younger, smaller children, they're too fast, they're too explosive. And then when I'm sure that works for the older kids,
Right. They always put that in there. Like,
but then you've got the flip side, the ones that work with older adolescents, adult individuals. So be like, well, I'm sure that works for those little kids, but we serve the 7 foot tall gargantuan third degree black belt with a chainsaw.
right.
How are you going to protect against that person? But the reality is, the point that you brought up, there is so much scrutiny for what we do and how we do it these days that I feel like creativity is needed.
Oh,
Whether
it's so needed.
whether we're comfortable with it or not. And I mean, change is never comfortable.
hmm
It hasn't been comfortable for us over the years, and I'm sure it's not for anybody else.
Right. I think the other thing you pile on top of all those feelings of uncertainty and worried about doing the wrong thing
Hmm.
is we live in a day and age that what's the percentage chance that you're going to get caught doing the wrong thing
Hmm.
on a camera
Yeah.
is so high. So it's not
Yep.
even just someone can talk through something that might have happened. It's, oh, well, no. And then someone whips out a cell phone or
Right.
a camera that's on a unit or in a
Mm.
classroom and shows you what you did wrong.
Yeah.
That's tough.
That is. That is. So how do we make people influence people, however we want to put it, to be open to change and creativity, to trying something new, not just sticking with what they've always done just because they've always done it.
Well, I think for me, I think it's twofold. I think it's number one, making sure that the people in administrative management oversight type positions,
Hmm.
and again, that's not even just the management of a school, but even bigger than that, regulatory bodies,
Hmm.
Office of Human Rights, whoever is holding your license,
Hmm.
they have to sort of partner
Yeah.
together with schools and agencies to make sure we're on the same page that we want to allow people to be creative. And we can't sort of, ask them to be creative and then bash them over the head because they were creative.
Right.
On the level of the person who needs to be creative,
Hmm.
I think it's confidence. I think it's building confidence. So at least even if something doesn't work out the way you were hoping, you
Hmm.
still feel good that you gave it a chance. Like,
Well, I do agree that there's a element of confidence that goes into it, but also a willingness to be vulnerable,
well, yeah, and to fail.
that no one is
Hmm.
perfect.
Right. That.
No matter how long you've been in here, no matter how many initials you have, degrees, everything, like any of us can make a mistake.
Hmm.
In fact, we will, and we're going to make a lot of them.
Right.
And not only being willing to acknowledge that and move forward, but also making sure your work culture is such where you don't get shamed for those mistakes. And I think that happens a
Right.
lot.
Right.
Um, you've got someone who tries to do something different, then they're like, see,
Hmm.
if it doesn't go the way that you want it to. When the reality is, none of this is an exact science. There just
Right.
isn't. Um, and I think that kind of goes, well, before I touch on next thing, let's talk about that part, the licensing regulatory level,
Hmm.
because we've run into some challenges there where, facilities, schools, organizations, hospitals want it. The licensing bodies are skeptical. They're like, well, this isn't the brands that we're used to.
Right.
Oh, what's this new thing? Oh, I'm not sure about that. You know, how do we start to open those doors? Because I just think about, the progress we've made with what we've been doing, this approach, how it's helped other people. I feel like more places that will actually use it on a day to day are hearing about us and open, but sometimes it's the ones that hold the keys to the kingdom
Mm.
that aren't willing to
Absolutely.
pull that key out. How
Yeah,
do we
but
reach it?
really it's no different, right? Because we're talking about direct care teachers,
Hmm.
aides. We want them to be vulnerable. We want them to be open to trying something,
Hmm.
sort of like taking that step off the cliff and seeing
Yeah.
what it's the same with the licensing people. Because I feel like they feel like they're under scrutiny
Hmm.
from the community, from the state
That's
level,
true.
right? So if they approve something that they
Hmm.
maybe never heard of, or they've just, maybe they start to hear some schools are having success with it, or
Hmm.
they're nervous too. They're nervous. And again, I think a lot of it also comes down to we live in, unfortunately, a day and age not only of cameras and video, but of lawsuits and
Yeah,
litigation.
absolutely.
And so do you want to be that person, to do the right thing,
Hmm.
but then also maybe put your career on the line? I think it's hard. So, I mean, I think from our standpoint, from Ukeru, what we could do to help is by showing them evidence of other places where things are going well and to do what we can to sort of help again give them that confidence and, I don't know, arm them with just a lot of documentation.
Right. That's one thing I really appreciate about our marketing folks, what they've done with the case studies on our site is so many other, systems, approaches, whatever the different places call themselves. They talk about evidence-based practices, but no evidence other than the statement that says evidence-based practices,
Right.
And what I really love is that, we have obviously our data from Grafton, but we also have growing data and
Mm-hmm.
experiences from other places of different varieties, not just one, not just schools, not just residential, not just hospitals. Like it's growing,
Right.
in that department. So,
Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, absolutely. Kudos to our own in house department,
hmm
but also to our customers
hmm
being willing to put it out there
yep.
because some of the stories didn't start out so good.
Oh,
That
absolutely.
they're willing to put their information out there in order to, again, create this wave of change.
hmm
So appreciative of that too.
Yeah. So now let me fast forward back to where I was. What people are looking for, change is hard, creativity is hard sometimes to accept. But maybe that falls into we want a template
Hmm.
that works for everybody. We want a script.
Hear it all the
Like
time.
tell us what to say, when we say it, this is what we do, when this happens, almost like a textbook in a way.
Hmm.
What's well, first off, is a script really going to work? And why not? Let's start there.
Right. I'm not a fan
Yeah.
of scripts at all.
hmm
And I think for a number of reasons, I think they don't work. And I think the more you try to offer scripts,
hmm
the less you are enabling your staff
hmm
to grow,
Yeah.
right? I think scripts are not individualized.
Mhm.
Like, if you've seen one third grader, you've seen one third grader.
Right.
Like, like everybody's different as human beings. And even if you have a certain population of student or clients and behaviors might even look similar,
hmm
they're still different and they need to be treated
Yeah.
different.
I mean, when I think about people wanting a script, and in my mind, when I'm saying script, what I mean is when people are looking for that magic bullet, magic pill, punishment based consequence that will stop it, that will just stop all behavior, right? Or on the flip side, the magic pill, magic bullet reward or reinforcer,
Mhm.
positive reinforcer that we can put out there. Um,
Well, I think that those are scripts that we get questions about a lot.
mhm,
But I also think we get requests for scripts often that are more like, so when Johnny has been uh, destroying the room
mhm,
for 5 minutes, when do we stop blocking and do something more restrictive? Or if he runs out of the classroom, like when do we safe turn him? Or just like
mhm,
very little details, which again, I mean, I think ultimately we try to give some suggestions and the way to think it
mhm.
through,
Yeah,
but there's no script for that.
yeah. Well, plus, I mean, just thinking in terms of how the brain works. When you're in a heightened circumstance, if you say this is exactly what you do and you do it, I'm not sure that we are going to have the full mental capability to recall that script as it should be anyway. You
Hmm.
know, um, and it's interesting because as we're talking about this, it makes me think about how a lot of times we treat interventions and stuff almost like standardized testing.
Explain that.
What I mean is, you do a standardized test and it puts it there and you've got your answers. Like everything's A to B, A to B, A to B. It's very simple, but in a real situation, it can change on a dime.
Oh yeah.
And not only can it change on a dime, you might be following what you think is that script. And then someone shows up in the room that neither you nor the person who's escalated expected. And now it's gone a whole different direction. Or a kid or something walks by and says something through the window at them, or anything. A loud sound happens. You go to say the script, but you say it in the wrong tone.
Mhm.
Different things. So I I wish there was more. I guess only way I can think to say it is improvisation and practice sometimes.
Mhm.
So I think sometimes folks get taught in a way that makes it seem more simple than it is.
Yeah,
And there's nothing simple about dealing with people on a good day, much less at their
absolutely.
worst.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that that's something that I know we've all been trying to do more and more
Hmm.
as we're training people, or even when we have consultation calls, follow
Yeah.
up calls, is trying to help people to walk through situations. And I'm with you. I think you got to practice that like over and over and over.
Hmm.
And, it makes me even think more of the things that we offer in a typical training are sort of like guideposts,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
And just stay within these guideposts. And then you have like all of these different
Hmm.
options. I know that I was with one of our other trainers, I don't know, a week and a half ago or whatever.
Hmm.
And we were with a group of folks in Florida. And we literally spent hours just going through scenarios,
Hmm.
right? And what we
Yeah.
did is we came up with scenarios and we had the group talk about, like,
Hmm.
really even looking at, like, so what does this child's trauma mean in this situation? What are the
Hmm.
things to pay attention to?
Hmm.
And we got great feedback. Like, people said that, they felt that that was so useful. And I think if you do that kind of stuff, especially for particular kids you're working with, we
Hmm.
often talk about doing Ukeru live or practicing blocking,
Hmm.
practice safe turn. But it's also that talking and practicing around the situations before you even get to the blocking.
Hmm.
I think that, and again, I think there's
Practicing when to talk, how close you get.
right. And that, I
Yeah.
think that builds confidence because people then start thinking, like, again, when Johnny does this tomorrow, I'm going to be ready.
Hmm.
Like, I know all these things I'm going to try. So, but again, it's not a script, it's just a bunch of options and ideas.
Right. Right. Open as many doors as you can, and ultimately, which door you choose is going to be a lot of factors, right?
Right.
Your own capability, your confidence, your personality, everything else that goes through. Like some people are great de escalators. They can think on the fly and come up with all kinds of things. Some people, if it's time for verbal de escalation, you might want to have them hang back a little bit.
Right.
We've all got different strengths and limitations when it
Absolutely.
comes to things.
Yeah. But you and I talked a little bit in one of those car rides about, it's the goal is to actually teach people not to memorize the script,
Hmm.
but to really have an in-depth understanding of the guideposts,
Hmm.
which in many cases you might think some of that stuff's common sense.
Hmm.
Um but it's really not. Common sense is not so common. So, you and I talked a little bit about that. It's really maybe even asking people to use trauma sense,
Hmm.
right? Everything that you've learned through your training around trauma informed approaches, like
Hmm.
how can you use those within your guideposts to
Hmm.
help inform all your options?
Yeah. Well, and I think that plays into what we try to teach with the bowling point, comforts control, all of that.
Hmm.
Um, Even if regardless of whether I just got in the field or I've been here a long time, having, like you've been saying, those guideposts, those general guidelines of how close should I really be getting to this person? Is what I'm doing making things better or worse?
Right.
But I think a lot of that requires me to not necessarily be calm because it's easy to say, oh, be calm in a situation, but to self monitor as
Right.
much as you're monitoring the other person,
Absolutely.
you know? And a lot of that I think comes down to mindset.
Hmm.
What is my goal working with the individuals? Do I see them as folks that they need discipline and I'm here to do it? Or is it I'm here to help them work through it? So I think a lot of times when people are looking for the scripts, they're looking for the magic thing that will stop the behavior. But I think that we're human beings and we're going to struggle with that stuff. But I think that at some point we have to accept that the folks we serve are here for a reason.
Mhm.
And it's not just, oh, they need discipline. It's they have not successfully navigated how to deal with adversity.
Right.
And I think sometimes the challenge is also that a lot of times we haven't either.
Hmm.
You know, um, our current climate, I feel like people are very good at conflict in groups or online, but in one-on-one, people are like,
Right.
it gets a little iffier.
Right. I'm so stuck on what you just said around the ability to sort of stop and think and say, is what I'm doing helping?
Yeah.
I mean, if you could,
Hmm.
if you just end it right there,
Right.
right? If just
Right.
that one question that would be in our head, is what
Yeah.
I'm doing helping?
Am I making things better? Or am I making things worse?
Right.
Right.
Right. And put on top of that, if you have the luxury to have an observer or a second person,
Hmm.
even through that person's eyes, if I'm watching you in a situation, if I'm thinking that, is he making it better or is he making it worse?
Yeah.
Right? Because even if you
Yeah.
can't see it, if I can see that you're making it worse, well, then it becomes my responsibility.
Hmm. I think another barrier that could be to helping people develop that trauma sense and being able to apply it is the stringent, um, how do I say it? Not being willing to give training its due.
Mm-hmm.
Like let's follow this template. We need people in and out, as quickly as possible. When I mean, maybe if I'm working a job where I just need to know how to push certain buttons, pull certain levers, you might be able to do it with a more regimented. But when you're dealing with the improvisational nature of aggressive behavior, I think places in general, our field as a whole, doesn't give people enough time to adequately train.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I've even been thinking a lot about, what our training is when we deliver it. You know, it's something I've found myself thinking and saying more is, if you're a user, brand new user getting trained by us that first day, or if you're trainers the
Mm-hmm.
2 days, you are getting a base coat.
Right.
We're giving you the best base coat we can. We're not able to put all the trimmings and the decorations there, but this is giving you the base. I think that any training, any approach that says that, after you went through this however many days, even if it's a week-long training, you go through this week, you can perfectly do everything. If that's a lie.
Right.
You know,
Well, and
there's,
again,
there's too many
to me,
factors.
you want just the base coat
Right.
because we should not be dictating
Yeah.
all the other actions that should come, your
Right.
decoration. We
And we
shouldn't
won't
be
be there.
right. Well, and because we don't know.
Yeah.
We don't
We
know
don't
the
know.
individual that's being worked with.
Yeah.
Right. So we shouldn't
Yeah.
even be trying that. Right.
Yeah. I was thinking about a conversation I had with someone recently. They were talking about me hating physical restraint. And I said, the concept of physical restraint is not what I hate. What I hate is practicing things for a short period of time, a skill that could have major consequences, doing it in a slow fashion that's not realistic, and telling people that you're going to be able to do this.
Safely.
Yeah,
That you're going to
safely.
be okay.
Absolutely. I think about, doing martial arts over the years. I've trained a lot of places that had, you know, black belts of multiple degrees. And as long as you did it under like the technical sparring where it's in a certain format, oh, they're great. You add improvisation in there, and they might as well be first day they came in.
Right.
And I feel like a similar thing with trainings is you have to add some uncertainty
Mm-hmm.
to it. You have to add some improvisation. And as we do, as much as we can with our drills, fire that amygdala up.
Right.
It's like, okay, you learned how to do this slow and sequentially. Now let's add more stress to it,
Absolutely.
So,
Yeah, absolutely.
so how can we develop trauma sense more in our field? Like, where does it start?
Well, I mean, I think in our field, just the term, trauma informed,
Hmm.
that has become pretty widespread. At
Hmm.
least people know about it. There's an
Yeah.
awareness. There's an awareness. Um, but I think honestly, that awareness has to be spread even more,
Hmm.
because I do feel like most organizations, as you're hiring people in, they
Hmm.
may not have experience
Hmm.
around that. So I think there has to be like sort of a greater overarching awareness, some kind of push. But then I really do think it takes practice.
Yeah.
It takes as much practice as anything physical
Hmm.
to
Maybe
just sort
more.
of get your mind going in that way. So it becomes second nature.
Hmm. Yes. I was talking to my parents not too long ago, and they were talking about the field we're in. They're like, "Well, it's one of those fields where a machine will never be able to do the job." But then my mind goes creative
Hmm.
with the sci-fi stuff and the AI. Could you ever see a day where we have AI staff?
For me, I hope we never see that day.
Me too.
Yeah, I'm sure that there's going to be people out there that think that that could be amazing. I've already heard people talk about, oh, if we could distribute medication through, then we wouldn't have med errors. And then,
Eh,
and then the next,
machines are built by people.
exactly. I think there's something, it's a human services field for a reason.
Yeah.
I personally think you got to have the human contact.
Hmm.
But I'm sure there's many, many people out there that would argue that.
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting. I just think in the next 5 to 10 years of tech advances, what all will even make its way into our field with it.
Hmm.
The point at which there's robots walking around, hopefully I'll be dead and buried. That's my
That's
hope.
it's a little scary.
Yeah.
It's a little scary. Now, some things I think, as a society that could work and be
Hmm.
cool,
Yeah,
but not taking care of people. I think you need people taking care of people.
absolutely. Well, plus the modeling aspect.
Hmm.
The best way to teach is the model.
Yeah. I'm along the same lines. Me, Christopher. I get on these like Netflix binges, and my latest has been World's Toughest Prisons,
Mm.
right? And
Hmm.
I've been a little blown away by a few of them.
Yeah.
That there's countries out there who are trying some really radical approaches
Hmm.
that are so kind,
Mm.
right? I wasn't expecting to see that. I was expecting to see, all these prisons that's lined up with murderers and
Yeah.
violence and drugs, and what I'm seeing is they're trying to take a kinder, more rehabilitative approach.
Mm.
And you might, I don't know, maybe there's a place for AI there, but I don't know. I think for me, it's seeing like if a place that was once considered housing the most dangerous adults
Hmm.
in the world can start talking about these same adults
Hmm.
with some understanding and kindness. And I mean, we're not trying to make it Disneyland or not, but
Hmm.
just treat them as a human being.
Yeah.
Sometimes I think, wow, sometimes we go into schools and organizations who aren't there.
Yeah.
So if they can do it, I
That's
mean,
true.
there's a whole lot of sort of trauma stuff that's left to do just in our schools and behavioral health organizations.
Well, and I still think a lot of that comes down to your personal mindset,
Oh,
you know?
absolutely. Yeah. Well, and society drives some of that
Yeah,
too.
that's true. That's true. All right.
Yeah. That's deep. We got to get
We
in
got
some
deep.
deep stuff.
Next time we'll try to do a comedy special here for you. All right. It was good talking to you as always.
Yep.
Thank you all for joining us. We'll talk to you soon. Take
Take
care.
care.